to talk a bit more about what's going on in East Phillips with suing the city.
Oh, thank you for that question, Lydia. I'm living and breathing what's going on in East Phillips right now, so I'm happy to talk about it. There was a campaign that we put together, and we as a group of people who are live and work in East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, decided that we wanted to put an end to the toxic pollution that is just very much a part of life in inner city communities all over the country, but certainly in South Minneapolis and in North Side Minneapolis. And beginning maybe about 7 years ago, we started talking about the fact that there was this empty building that was called the Roof Depot, a former warehouse that was actually built in the 30s as a storage building for Sears. So it was well constructed out of brick and steel and almost 250,000 square feet, an unusual amount of building intact in the inner city. But it was going to be opened up and sold by the Roof Depot owners. When the neighborhood became aware of it, one of the things we thought was, oh my gosh, it's right across the street from two very toxic polluter industries, the Smith Foundry and the Bituminous Roadways and asphalt plant. And the Women's Environmental Institute is involved in this because actually, partly it was my neighborhood I lived in and represented in the legislature. We did a research project that culminated in 2008 with a law we were able to pass. So for a couple of years before that, an environmental justice law that we were able to pass. A couple of years before that, we were documenting the disproportionate incidence of environmentally related toxic illnesses in the neighborhood, in all of Phillips neighborhood. And we took information that had been, some of it had been gathered and was sitting in boxes under desks at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or the Minnesota Department of Health, but it wasn't made accessible to the common public. And we also did a survey, WI did a survey, door-to-door survey of the health status of people in Phillips neighborhood. And we put that together on a GIS map. And the community said to me, we would like you to deal with this issue in the legislature. And we put together the first in the nation language that did pass in 2008 that created a stricter threshold for environmental protection in our neighborhood. And it was called the Cumulative Health Impact Analysis. Fancy words that mean if you are a community that, like South Minneapolis, Phillips in particular, that already has an existing burden of environmentally health-related diseases, anybody who's going to come in and try to pollute you more has a stricter threshold that they have to meet before they can be permitted to do that. More protection. Those words were not existing in any law anywhere in the country at the time. And so when we passed it, we had incredible support. I mean, it was a community initiated legislation, community led. We had preschoolers and kindergartners. I remember one day at 7 o'clock in the morning came over to talk with the Speaker of the House about why they needed this law. So the Little Earth of United Tribes Native community really provided a lot of leadership here. And they still do in the effort we're doing right now with the Roof Depot. And what I want to say about maybe an answer to your question, Lydia, is we've had nothing but opposition from the city in trying to create this asset in the neighborhood. We're working with a number of tribal communities, this East Phillips neighborhood, a group which is a coalition of people from the Latino community, from the Native American community, from the East African community, African American community, and the white community. There is a steering committee has been leading this process. We took that language that was passed in 2008 and said, City of Minneapolis, you can't do what you want to do here. I think I skipped a step. They decided that we shouldn't be able to take over this building. We wanted to turn it into a year-round indoor urban farm, dealing with issues of food justice and so on. They said, no, we're going to knock that building down. And because we want to put up a bunch of small buildings. We want to store our water pipes and our sewer pipes and our water hydrants and all these things. We want to store them there on that site. This is a good place to do it because then the people don't have to go all over the city to pick up the public works department can just all centralize their work in your neighborhood.
Plus 500 cars a day.
Yeah, and they were going to build a structure for hundreds of employee cars to come in, and we figured it would be about 1,000 more traffic cars in and out right across the street from Little Earth. Now, one of the things that we documented when we did this research, when WI did the research leading up to 2008 law, was that asthma, which is endemic in East Phillips, is related to traffic. The particulates that come out of vehicles, especially when you get into things like public works vehicles with diesel and other things, it causes asthma. And there's probably not a household in Little Earth housing that doesn't have several people with asthma. It's very serious. People die from asthma. It certainly affects them. It's the number one reason Minneapolis kids miss school, and it gets to be this cycle of children who are missing school and the other problems that come with falling behind in school. So anyway, the East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, this coalition that I described earlier, came together and said, we're going to do this. We got resources. And the city said, no, you're not. And they threatened eminent domain, which means that they can force a private owner to sell to them rather than to somebody else. And that's what they did. They actually raised the price. I think we had raised potentially like $5.5 million. The sellers were able to get it up almost to $8 million of our taxpayer dollars to have the city buy it out from underneath us. So, we have done everything from marches and protests in the street to going to court. So we filed a lawsuit. We were able to find a wonderful attorney who happens to be a tribal judge and is very familiar with a lot of the issues in our neighborhood, especially some of the racial justice issues. Her name is Elizabeth Royal. I'd like to give her credit because she really took on a hard job, and she helped us put together this lawsuit. And until about 4 weeks ago, we were not doing well. We had a lot of, in terms of the lawsuit and in terms of winning this fight, we had a number of votes with the city council. But when George Floyd's murder happened, some things that came out as a result of some of the work we were doing was existing relationships between some of the organizers in the neighborhood and new relationships that we also formed with the people who were active at George Floyd Square. They helped change the hearts of their own city council member, Councilmember Andrea Jenkins. She became an ally. And she said, I've learned something from what's going on here with 38th in Chicago. I've learned we need to listen to the neighborhood a lot more than we have. And she cited something that was passed by the city council, I think the 2020, which is that racism is a public health emergency. And she said, we say that this area is a green zone where environmental justice is the mode of operation that needs to be considered here. And she said, I think we need to stop opposing what the community is trying to do and listen to them. And I'm listening to my own constituents, she said. So she helped us. I want to give credit to a couple other people. There were at least 2 other city council members who were with us at the time. Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember Andrew Johnson, both were strong supporters. Our own city council member who represented the area, Alondra Cano, had gone through some real difficult challenges. She was a champion for this project, and then I think she just got really beat down and at a certain point kind of walked away. So that's why we really organized very, very strongly with these other allies. And I'm pleased to say Alundra came back, and she came roaring back, and she's there now trying to help pull this through again. And about 4 weeks ago, we had a vote where she helped us get the city council, every one of them, say, okay, pause. We're going to pause. And this is after about 4 years. Lydia, I think your question was like, what's going on? How did this take so long to happen? Well, and there's so many ups and downs. It's because it really about 4 years have passed from the beginning to where we are right now. And August 5th is kind of a D-Day. We will see whether or not the city council really did pause and terminate their plans and allow the community to go forward with the leadership that we have put together, and investors and a whole broad community basis of community organizations. A lot of anti-racism work has been done that I think has been really successful. The hard part is raising the funds to pay, you have to pay lawyers, and you have to pay for the costs of bringing people together, but we're scraping by, and it is an example of several things: strong community-based leadership, just determination, and to not give up. And I think the rise in racial justice consciousness that has been strong enough to bring us the votes we need on city council. I wouldn't necessarily have predicted it a few months ago, but I think we're at that point where August 5th could be a victory. We haven't got it for sure, but we're looking at how to develop a community-owned facility, a cooperatively, probably a co-op type of structure, and we're working with people, legal people, and economic development people who know how to do some of that stuff. But the most important thing is, and the insistence is, that the neighborhood itself own and operate and lead this facility. And one of the things that one more thing I'm going to say, one of the groups of folks that I think have helped us bring some of the other city council members along are the people whose businesses were destroyed along Lake Street. They want to come and be in this building with us. They want to restart. For example, Gani Mahal wants to put their aquaponics in that building. There's folks from the Latino Economic Development Center who are saying, hey, we need refrigeration space. We just don't have enough, even in our existing, we can't build it all back. Can we be in there? Yes. So we have been thinking about that. We also had added affordable housing to the project when we were developing it. Yes. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie's been paying good attention to this because I talk about it a lot. And we have, if we are able to do it, we'll have one of the largest solar arrays in the state. And, we're trying to do an environmentally something, and it's in the green zone, for goodness sakes. So that's a long answer, Lydia. I don't know if I gave you enough information, but thanks for asking, because I'm really proud of the people that have been working on this, lots of time and energy, and just never giving up, despite having terrible things said to us, like, well, what do you want? Clean water or clean air? You can't have both. Oh, yes, we demand both, So